Alright, so I don't really know where to start this one, so I'm gonna try to just start at the beginning, I guess. Well, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius announced End of Service, or EoS, about a week ago, and even though I haven't really played the game in a few years seriously, it still hit really close to home for me in the feels. I last played the game around the time NeoVisions released, a bit into War of the Visions lifespan. It was a few months after launch. And for years, I did play this game daily, and I really enjoyed it. I met so many cool people who are still involved in this community with me to this day. We still talk all the time and play other games together. I have been keeping up with the subreddit and also Sinzar's videos on the game, so I kind of could see this coming. And it's something that I've wanted to talk about, but I wasn't entirely sure. Just the emotions were starting to flow. One day back in 2016, I was sitting outside, relaxing by myself. I had my phone with me. I had recently heard that Final Fantasy VII was like on the App Store, and I was just sitting out there and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna check this out. It would be cool if I could just play some Final Fantasy right now while I'm just chilling out here relaxing. And so I searched up FF7, but on the second game on the list was actually Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. And since it was free, I never heard of it. I didn't know anything about it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to check this game out, see what it has to offer. And it's free, so what do I have to lose, right? I didn't really know anything about gacha games at the time or have any experience playing them. It was around Halloween when the Demon Rain and Laswell banner was up, and VLC Fina and Black Cat Lid were a thing, if you guys remember. I ended up getting VLC Fina. I did not get Rain or Laswell at the time, though. I didn't really understand or know anything about rainbows or special units or anything like that, or even the limited factor of things. So I was just, going with the flow, playing this new game in this new, essentially, genre that I didn't have any experience in. I played it for about a week. You remember the very first free pull you get at the very beginning of the game? I actually pulled a guy called Riser, who is like a 2-star unit or something. I don't even remember. And I used Riser. I thought he was so cool. I was like, heck yeah, Riser. This is my guy. I got him from that free pull. I remember going through the initial world of Grand Shell, that first island. The music was amazing. I remember so vividly going through Siren's Tower and eventually completing all that. And the Earth Shrine, going back and doing the explorations and stuff like that. I just remember it all so clearly, and I remember not knowing anything about the game and not being involved in any community around the game yet, just how cool it was to just be playing a Final Fantasy game like that. I loved the explorations, the story was great, just those first few islands and regions to go through, unlocking things, and I don't know, just seeing new areas and new places, new villains, blah blah blah. I still remember everything so clearly, and it was such a cool thing. I didn't even know about the bigger community playing the game yet. Eventually one day I looked up the game on Twitch and I was like, wow, I never even realized that mobile games were a thing on Twitch at that point, even though I was a streamer myself for years by that point. I had never seen anyone stream a mobile game and I wasn't even aware that it was a thing. But yeah, so my first team was pretty scuffed. It was like Riser, Rain, VLC, Fina. Gold Kefka was one of the lower rarity Kefkas who I thought was an insane carry at the time. This guy, to me, blew my mind. I was actually so excited and happy to have Kefka back then, not really knowing what I was doing. Eventually, after a couple of weeks, I actually pulled Lunith. This is when the Final Fantasy III banner came around, and Lunith was my first rainbow. He was a game changer, and he was so good. He had, innate dual wield, I think, even. This guy was my carry for months after I got him. It was actually amazing. I loved Lunith, and man, he was probably in any gacha game I've ever played now, Lunith was my guy. Eventually I did really learn a lot more about the game, and I really enjoyed the journey of progressing through seasons 1 and 2. My absolute favorite era of the game was actually when Esther and Sylvie came out, and then shortly after them, Xeno of the Beta Star came out. This was a really controversial time in the community, but I really loved those units, and they were exciting and new, and no one expected them, and I just loved that time in the game. It was my absolute favorite. Even the official live streams they had for the game at that time, I thought were very hype, and I know there was a lot of controversy in the community during that era, but for me, I absolutely loved it. With Sylvie, Esther, and Xeno, I managed to clear a ton of trials that I had never completed, and it was just one of the fondest memories I have. I remember Clake Uzult. He even came into my stream during one of those streams where I was clearing trials with those units. He was cheering me on, and even like throwing advice at me and stuff like that, and it was just super cool. But in the end, I did kind of fizzle out shortly after Neovisions were introduced, and I did do a couple of the first Dark Visions events, and I actually loved the Dark Visions events. I thought Dark Visions were really fun and super cool. So that was one thing that I really enjoyed about the game towards the end of me playing. I did have around 1,800 login days, so if that gives you an idea of roughly how much I played or how long I was in the game, it was years. And I even did used to make YouTube videos. I think my last Final Fantasy Brave Exvius YouTube video was about 4 years ago now, but I was making them from, I think my first video was in 2017. Mostly just pull videos. I usually just did the content and talked about the game a lot on Twitch, like on the live streams, but I would upload like my pull sessions to YouTube. Now, I said I had 1,800 login days. That's actually more login days than I have in War of the Visions now, and I have never missed a day in War of the Visions. So that just goes to show that even back then, the game was already older than the entirety of War of the Visions is at this point. Speaking of War of the Visions, do I think this will have any effect on War of the Visions, or is War of the Visions having its own completely unrelated issues? I don't know if this will specifically affect War of the Visions at all, but it 100% opened my eyes to the fact that War of the Visions could close at any moment, and to be honest, that scares me a little. I've been seeing War of the Visions bleed players constantly, and even people that assured me they would ride the game out all the way until end of service have now quit. It's actually really sad. It's been such a bummer. I'm telling you, there's been multiple people that have assured me they're going to be here till the end, riding high till the sunset, and now they're gone. Guilds are hard to keep full if you're not in like a top 10 guild, and streams have been performing lower than ever, and just overall there's been more negativity in the community than ever. It's been such a bummer to like log into Discord and just see people complaining or threatening to quit over this and that when I'm just sitting here and all I want to do is enjoy the game. I know it's negativity that almost maybe can't be avoided. You know, people have bad luck with polls or whatever the case is, but it's really discouraging to see when I just want to, you know, see the game and see happy stuff and, you know, have a good time. I'm tired of just seeing pure negativity on the subreddit, on Discords or whatever. It's such a bummer, man. In my opinion, one of the top deteriorating factors in all of this has been Holo Vision cards. I know there's a barrage of 100 cost new meta units, but for me, the thing that was like the beginning of the big downfall was the Holo Vision cards. They seem so punishing compared to anything else. They're 20k pity, which is double what it was before, but there's no guaranteed card on them anymore, so you have to spend the coins on the card, whereas before, you were able to just get the card from the step up, and then you would spend the coins on shards. So if you had to pity the card, you would at least have a ton of shards, and you wouldn't have to worry about like hurting for Viz to finish leveling that card up. You can't use stars on these cards. I don't know why that is. The stars aren't even that old of a system in the grand scheme of the game, but all of a sudden they're like, nah, we're going to basically phase those out when it comes to cards. There's no monthly tokens on the card shards either for Holo Vision cards. Now, and limited cards? For limited cards, they don't have hard quests either. So like when it comes to limited cards, if you have to pity a limited card, you have no choice but to spend even more Visior, or else you risk just never being able to finish that card and having like a half-built card in your inventory for the rest of eternity. Because sometimes those limited cards just never come back. So if you don't finish it while it's up, then there's a chance that you'll never finish it, so you have to spend Viz. To me, this was one of the ultimate greed updates they've ever done in the game. It felt extremely bad. Every card that I've had to pull on just feels so painful since this time. And yeah, and even people that disagree with me and think that like the power meta is what's killing the game even more, I just want you to think about like how much Viz this drains from you now compared to before. I think it was a lot easier to keep up on units or more frequently on units in the past when cards were like, honestly, it was more than half it's more than half the cost now compared to what it used to be. So essentially now we just have way less Visior for acquiring units and building units. And let's be honest, like I know cards are very essential and very important to making a lot of these builds work, but units are the fun thing to pull for. You know, units are the absolute key to team compositions and, you know, party builds and stuff like that. Cards are very important as well, and a lot of cards are more important than some units if you think about it, because you might need it in a very important party. That being said, the power creep meta that we're in is a bit of a problem as well, and it's something that's turning people off from the game a bit. I think people get discouraged because they don't have one of the powerful units, and older units don't work barely at all anymore. If you're using old units, it's almost like a free win for your opponent if they're not using old units in most cases, and it's just a bummer. I think a big part of it, though not the whole thing, is like when we get a new unit now, they're already so unbelievably strong, but they also get map buffs. This is another thing I think a lot of people don't take into consideration, is like these new units will get buffed maps in arena and guild battle and stuff like that for like 2 weeks or so, and that will make them seem even stronger. So that will get people to feel that FOMO even more, because they'll get completely smashed by this character or by this build with this brand new unit, but maybe not taken into consideration that they're buffed even more than usual because of the map buffs. And then when the map buffs go away, the units are still very good, don't get me wrong, like they're still super strong, but just not as strong. And I know map buffs are something we've always had, but to me it feels like in the recent era, these map buffs are making these already crazy strong units even more of a problem. To the point where, like, if you're using a fire team, you could lose to an ice team just because the map buffs are so strong to them. Or you know what I mean? Like if you're using a team that should be strong, it feels like they're not. And maybe that's what they want to go for, but you know, that's just one of the things that I'm noticing that makes this meta feel insane. Now, with the Final Fantasy Brave Exvius end of service announcement and the overall lower morale for the player base in War of the Visions, I'm definitely worried about the future of War of the Visions now. But that being said, they are a little bit different situations. Now, FFBE, Global, and JP, those two games were almost a year apart. So as you know, the FFBE end of service announcement was only for GL, and JP is actually going to stay up. But those two games are almost a year apart. They have a lot different things going on for them. Like FFBE Global has like some game modes that are completely only in Global, a lot of units that are completely only in Global. And whereas War of the Visions doesn't really have that. War of the Visions, essentially at this point, Global and JP are almost the same exact game now. They're only like a month apart now compared to FFBE, which is closer to a year apart, or at least like 9 or 10 months or something like that. So War of the Visions, it's just a lot closer. It's essentially the same game with some very minor differences. So I know that War of the Visions did have the Road to Worldwide within the last year, as well as discontinuing English voice acting, and a lot of people see that stuff as a sign of end of service to come. But I think they're just cost cutting. I think if they were going to end of service the game, they wouldn't have gone through all the trouble to do the Road to Worldwide, because I do believe that took a lot of resources to pull off that they could have just otherwise ignored and then just, you know, close the game if they were going for that. I don't think they were also intending or expecting the big influx of players leaving the game over this past year, which is what it feels like. I obviously don't know numbers. I don't know if people are actually leaving the game, but from my eyes, it for sure looks like that. I know in my stratosphere, people have definitely been leaving the game. Sorry. But I just wanted to say that, like, FFBE and War of the Visions, between Global and JP, they're almost like completely different situations. Now, you always hear about these games doing things like market research and testing, but in my eyes, I don't see it. Like, I don't know where they're doing this market research or where they're doing this testing, but especially in these Square Enix gacha games, compared to other gacha games that are like outside of the Square Enix hemisphere, I don't even know if I believe that they do market testing. I feel like if they have ever done market testing, they only did it for like a month, and they're like, oh, people still go for this 1 month in, so you know what, we're gonna roll with it. And they don't actually do market research over the course of like long term, because a lot of the stuff they do, it might make them bank over like a month period, but I feel like the long-term stuff is what absolutely just kills them. I don't know who is doing this market research. I don't know when they're doing this market research. And I don't know if they're just basing it off like older gacha games maybe that existed like in the early 2010s. I have no idea. But to me, it just feels like a bunch of baloney. They could have such an amazing thing with this game and with this franchise, but they just have problems keeping up. Honestly, I love this game, so I really hope it doesn't go anywhere anytime soon, but at the rate it's going, it's really hard to tell. I hope they can figure it out soon. I also hope they don't just double down on the greedy stuff until the inevitable end and they actually try to turn it around. But maybe it's too late for that. I have no idea. I've never seen a game get more generous over time when like it starts going downhill like this to try and fix things. So it's going to be really really rocky thing to see, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. FFBE, we're going to miss you, buddy. And War of the Visions, I don't know what's going to happen with you, but I hope it just gets better, honestly. That being said, I do love that a lot of the FFBE characters are in War of the Visions, like Rain, Laswell, Fina, Sakura, you know, all of them, Reagan, there's a lot of them. But what's cool is all the Veritas characters have recently come to War of the Visions, and they're all free, and they're all pretty strong, honestly. Like, they can hang fairly well in the current meta, which is really cool. So, I don't know, maybe the FFBE fix can be made there. Probably not, though, for the diehard FFBE fans. Anyways, this has just been my thoughts on everything, and I just hope things get better. And FFBE, it's a sad one to see it go. I know I haven't been active in it, but, you know, it is what it is. All gacha games are going to end someday, right? We're all free-to-play games in general. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully you stuck around this long. If not, I totally understand why. You probably didn't want to listen to me rambling for however long this video is. I have no idea. And, yeah, have a good one. Enjoy.